Good Sunday afternoon, Monday morning, Tuesday afternoon, whenever you're watching this online. We welcome you into SportsSource.tv and our YouTube channel. Thanks for being here for our overtime segment at the Sports Source. It is brought to you by Blue Smoke Cigars, as you see right there. You can see their website. These folks are located South Peters Road. It's you can't miss it. It's right there, Kingston Pike, South Peters Road. You'll look for the sign, Blue Smoke Cigar, easy to find. Membership gets you your own personal locker. Gets you 15% off their elite selection of fine cigars, just terrific cigars in there. 10% off discounts at McScrooge's Wine and Liquor, which then you can take back to Blue Smoke Cigar and keep in your locker. Access to their TVs, lounge area, card tables, golf simulators, and much, 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 much more. Blue Smoke Cigar. If you enjoy a fine cigar anywhere in Knoxville, that's the place to go. Blue Smoke Cigar. All right. I am joined by Chuck Cavaleris, Josh Ward, Ryan Callahan down there. Teased this during the show, want to talk about it here. Let's take a look at the SEC schedule for Tennessee. All right, now we're going to leave this up for a little bit here. What I want to ask is, when does Tennessee get its first SEC win of the year? And here's the way we'll play this. I don't want, well, they could win, because obviously, technically, they could win any of those games. Where's the first place you really see a game where you could see them favored going in? Let's put it that way. So where you got Florida and Georgia in September, you got Auburn, Alabama, South Carolina in October, then you got Kentucky, Missouri, and Vandy in November. Which of those games is the first one? I think the first one the fans might yell is Florida. But I don't see them being favored against Florida.
I think it's November. I think it's Kentucky. I don't think you're favored to win any of those first 5 games, because Georgia obviously just played in the national championship. Auburn, Alabama, those are all tough. That's part of that gauntlet they're going to have. Florida's an interesting game, and South Carolina, I mean, you're in the discussion with them, but it still would be an upset if you win that game. South Carolina's turned things around more quickly than people would have thought under Will Muschamp. So I think that Kentucky game, and even that's more of a toss-up. I mean, they just lost to them last year, but
yeah,
I think
technically, if you're going by that, they lost to everybody.
They did. But yeah, I think being at home, I think Tennessee's probably a slight favorite in that game, and that's the first one you can point to and say that's maybe a good chance of being a win.
Okay. Guys, where are you looking on that schedule?
Yeah, I agree with Ryan. I think it's Kentucky in November. And I think Tennessee's going to be coming off a win against Charlotte. You'll start to feel good about, okay, in November they can make a run at a bowl game, but I think they're going to be in a position where they will have to win out to go to a bowl game if they want to get to 6-6.
Like Derek Dooley's first year, they were 2-6 going into that final month and had to win out to make a bowl, and they did that year.
Yeah.
And you're almost waiting until Halloween again. I'm going to take another side. I'm going to say I think they're going to get Florida this year at home against a coach that turned you down coming in, and how Jeremy Pruitt can try and get things revved up. I think they've got a chance to win a close game against Florida, and then you're going to have a drought of victories until you get down to the very end of your season, most likely.
Wow, how about that? So we got 2 Kentuckys in November and 1 Florida in September.
I can see that happening. I can.
I do think Florida's winnable.
Yeah.
You're at home. It's a first-year coach there. What if they go with Felipe Franks and it's not great? Then they're trying to figure out, is it Emory Jones? And their offense is struggling. It's a low-scoring game. So it's very winnable. But going in, yeah, I would think the Florida's favored.
And that game always plays, it always is played in a way that it favors the underdog in a way, because you're trying to figure yourself out at that point. Florida doesn't entirely know what it is usually by that point. Tennessee doesn't entirely know what it is. So that usually helps the underdog a little bit, maybe even the tables.
And Tennessee's players have played competitive games against Florida the last few years, winning one of them. But
should have beaten them last year.
Yeah, from a mindset standpoint, Tennessee I don't think is overwhelmed by Florida coming in.
And here's the thing, if you somehow pull an upset against West Virginia and come into this thing on a little bit of a roll, crowd's going to be loud and into it. Crowd's been into it before, though, if the Florida game's in here, and it hasn't helped. But look, it's possible, but I don't see Tennessee being a favorite going in there. So I'm going, I almost want to say Missouri, but I'm going to say Kentucky in November. That's 3 Kentuckys and a Florida in terms of Tennessee getting their first win. Let's go negative there.
And October is really tough.
Yeah, I think
like South Carolina, you might say, hey, could you beat them? But you got to go there. It's the week after Alabama. That becomes really difficult.
That team won 9 games last year, and everybody, they beat Jim Harbaugh, who everybody worships and wants to throw billions at. They beat Jim Harbaugh head-to-head last year. Muschamp is not the clown that people around here wanted him to be.
He's never lost to Tennessee.
They dreamed he would be a clown because he had that 4-8 year down there when they were just ravaged by injuries. Everyone forgot he also had an 11-1 year down there. They forgot that he took over an absolute train wreck that Urban Meyer had left. It was just It was a train wreck into a garbage fire. All right, into a dumpster. Train crashed into a dumpster.
What was
And
the dumpster
Steve
doing
Spurrier-
on the train track?
Steve Spurrier said at South Carolina he didn't leave the cupboard full.
Right.
Right.
And
And
everybody
I-
expected him to have a bad start there.
I think he's done better each of the first 2 seasons than was expected. Will Muschamp at South Carolina.
Yeah.
We talked during the show about the ranking of Tennessee's schedule being down, near the bottom, almost
it's
to
crazy.
the bottom. Look at that middle portion of Tennessee's schedule.
Oh, yeah.
Tell me who plays a tougher schedule than that.
Yeah, take Florida out. You got Georgia, Auburn, Alabama, and South Carolina. South Carolina being on the road.
On the road.
Again, I would look at South Carolina a little differently if it were here, but on the road, that is a tough 4-game stretch.
Yeah.
And that's after Georgia, and then you get the open date, and then Auburn. The open date
Right.
is between Georgia and Auburn.
Right.
So
So
you
you
get
have
one
to
open
play
date in
that
the middle of that.
really physical game against Alabama and then go to South Carolina. So that the timing's really bad.
Yeah, I'll go November. And here's the question, though. What is the fan support? What's the crowd like if they haven't had an SEC win until November? Again, if you've gone, and by that time limit, you know what the national story is going to be. Haven't won an SEC game since.
Yeah.
Because it'll be what would
almost
that
2
be,
years.
Vanderbilt 2 years ago.
It would have been like, 11 in a row or
You'll start,
something?
so
Yeah.
you'll be getting haven't won an SEC game in
Well,
21 months, 22 months.
It'd be almost
The-
2 full
the
years.
You'll,
one
still
thing-
you'll start to get that stuff next
I
year.
understand what you're saying,
with
but the
this
one
fall.
thing from last year, it seemed like the crowd and the fans stayed with them. And I know it was tough until the last game.
The last few games.
Yeah.
You had.
But,
now,
I mean,
the
it was-
LSU
to me,
game
that
a
was
storm,
surprising,
But
yeah.
still,
Because they could have bailed on them and said,
yeah, it wasn't 50,000 until the last couple of weeks.
Right.
Yeah, and November's always tough here too because it's one of the northernmost schools in the SEC. Weather's a factor. You get those November night games thanks to the new SEC TV contract and everything. So you
But
throw
here's
in,
the thing. I don't use that. Don't. You can't call yourself the best fan base in America and then say, but it's
Yeah.
cold. But it's the flu.
Well-
I mean, people do they go to Ohio State games? Yeah,
but-
they do.
Sure.
Do Kentucky fans go out in February to watch basketball? Yeah, they do.
But
So this fan base says it's the best in the world, and we in the media always tell them they're the best in the world.
the ones that show up are.
Yeah.
Well, live up to it.
When you have the choice.
So yeah, you're right. I mean, it gets cold in November, but I think
And it's-
let's put it this way: if they were 11-0, do you think the stadium would be packed? Okay.
Yeah.
If they're 0-11, would it be? No. So it's not the weather; it's part of the team.
Yeah.
And my point is, I think a lot of fans,
Mm-hmm.
whether they're happy about Pruitt or not, you can argue with them, but I'm arguing with you. I think a lot of fans will look at it and say, we haven't won an SEC game in 2 years. Why am I going over there?
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't blame them.
I've argued this for years. Maybe a different discussion for a different day, but the SEC's scheduling for Tennessee has done them no favors for a number of years now, and this is just another example of that. I mean, how much different would people think about this season if you've got Kentucky, Missouri, one of those SEC games in November pushed into September? You could at least get some confidence early on. You
Yeah.
wouldn't be so beaten up when you get to the part of the schedule where you have to get your wins. It makes a big difference if you have one of those games pushed into the early part of the schedule. Instead, Tennessee's schedule for years has been sort of front-loaded where all
Yes.
your wins, your more likely wins, are at the back.
Which is why Tennessee always said, "Wow, you remember what you do in November?"
Yeah.
Yeah, because you play the Patsies in November. I mean, you're right. I agree with you. But I think you could also, if we did this panel, if I brought in three guest panelists from each of the other 13 schools, they'd sit here and say, "Well, the SEC in our schedule just sucks.
Yeah.
Here's what they do to us." So everybody's got their complaints, but I agree with you. Tennessee's schedule every year would look much different if you had Kentucky up at the top or Missouri at the top,
Or even in
instead of Florida.
October. Somewhere
or
in the
even
middle.
if Florida had to play here in November.
Yeah.
Yeah. Of course, they'll never do that because they don't want to play Tennessee and Florida State back to back.
Right, I know. I know.
They'd have Georgia, Tennessee, and Florida State at the end of the season.
Right.
And there was some sort of streak where Florida never played in an SEC game where the temperature was
Yeah.
below a certain point because they never go to any of the northern schools in November.
Right.
So that, a lot of things.
That's right. They always get Kentucky in September
Yeah.
is when they traditionally play them.
So
Yeah.
a lot of the tougher games. There's some things that don't work in Tennessee's
Timing
favor.
matter in 2016, and it's just a what if. If you go to Kentucky after you have the Hail Mary against Georgia instead of going
Yeah.
to Texas A&M, and then Alabama afterward,
It's great.
it,
yeah.
it would have probably been a different result that year. But you play the schedule you're given.
I'm just warning you right now. I'll just say that again, just to reiterate and remember it when people are saying, if they don't get Florida, and you get to November, you're going to start getting sick of the fact that ESPN and everybody else is saying Tennessee still hasn't won an SEC game since.
And you know what it'll be just like? It'll be just like the Bruce Pearl timeline.
Yes.
Every time
Yep.
we saw that, and it was like, why do they keep harping on this?
Exactly. Well,
You
get
know?
ready for it. Get ready. If you go to November and you haven't won
That's
a game,
another reason why that Florida game is so important.
And the bad thing is it's also a little misleading. I mean, it's true, but it's misleading to say, well, they haven't won one in 2 years. Well, you only played 8 in a year, so it's not like, 2 years. They played 3 games a month for the last 24 months and haven't won one.
By that point, though, you're talking 5 SEC losses to start the year. They lost, Vanderbilt at the end of 2016. So you're talking 14 consecutive SEC losses if it
That's
gets to
right.
that point.
Vandy was a loss there.
Yeah.
So you haven't
So-
won an SEC game since Missouri
Yeah,
of that year of 2016?
So we're predicting that they're going to get to a 14-game SEC losing streak.
And
That's a lot.
Get ready.
Tennessee already has a current losing streak against all 13 SEC
Yes,
schools. So
exactly.
you'll hear that repeated.
Yeah, I just think, and I think if you're hearing all that repeated, and it does go into November, I just wonder what kind of crowd support you're going to have. And that's not a dig at the fans. That's simply reality.
Human nature,
And you
especially
also,
for the fans that have got to travel from the mid-state.
Oh,
West.
yeah. You're
That's the
gonna
ones
travel
I
here.
think about.
Yeah.
season ticket sales will be a challenge this year, I think. But on top of that, I wonder how much does the team stay in it? I mean, this is a challenge for a coach with taking over a rebuilding program like this. You look at what Butch Jones did. One of the best things he did was change that because under Derek Dooley, I think it had become commonplace. They had kind of forgotten how to win, and you've got to instill a winning mindset while going through a really tough 8-game stretch to open the year.
Yeah, he taught them how to win, then they forgot.
Yeah.
Then they had the thing from Men in Black, the neuralizer, or whatever
Yeah,
they call it.
neuralizer.
Forgot
Yeah.
everything. All right, Ryan, Josh, Chuck, thank you very much. Thank you for watching. We always appreciate it. Visit our sponsors because they're the ones that make this thing possible week in, week out, month in, month out, 15 years in, 15 years out. So thank you very much to our sponsors and to you. See you next Sunday at 11 on WATE 6 or on Facebook Live.